Open the door. Open it. Let me out of here.
You think walking out that door makes you free? You have been in this since the day you walked in.
Then that was your mistake, not mine. Let go of my wrist.
You are not walking out of here until you understand what is waiting for you on the other side of that door.
Then start talking. Because right now you are the only thing in this room I do not trust.
I said I quit. Jane's voice cracked through the office like something had broken loose inside her. Like 3 months of watching and calculating and holding herself together had finally hit a wall it could not get past. The sound hit every surface. The glass, the ceiling, the 40 floors of soul air below the windows. It rolled through the room and settled and left a silence behind it that was worse than the shout. Papers scattered off the edge of the desk. Her hands were shaking. She felt it, and she could not make it stop, and she was done pretending she could make anything stop. Choi Hyun-ju stood on the other side of the office. Still. Completely. Unnervingly still. Jacket off. Shirt sleeves rolled to the forearm, the tattoos covering his arms dark and deliberate against his skin. The single streak of blonde in his black hair caught the morning light from the window behind him. He had stopped being the CEO approximately 3 minutes ago. Right now he was something else. Something older than the boardroom. Something the men who feared his name knew, and the men who trusted his handshake didn't. He looked at her. She looked back. Neither of them blinked. "Lower your voice," he said. "Don't." Jane pressed her palm flat against her chest. Her heart was a fist hitting a wall. She was furious and frightened, and she was beautiful even in this. Her dark skin lit gold by the morning pouring through the glass. Her eyes bright and fierce and absolutely refusing to break. "Don't you dare tell me to lower my voice. I saw what I saw. I know what this company is. I know what you are. And I am done." She grabbed her bag, turned, hit the door handle, locked. She hit it again. Harder. Rattled the frame. Pulled. Pushed. Locked. She spun around. Hyun-ju had not moved a single step. But his face, that controlled, armored, carefully constructed face, had shifted into something she had never seen on it before. Not in 3 months of working beside him. Not once. Not anger. Not the cold calculation she had braced for. Something that looked, on a man like Choi Hyun-ju, terrifyingly like fear. Jane. His voice dropped into a register she had never heard. Raw, stripped all the way down. Like something underneath the performance had finally broken through the floor. "If you walk out that door right now, I cannot protect you." The room went absolutely silent. Her hand fell from the handle. "What?" she whispered. "They already know you've seen it." He took one step toward her. One. Slow and deliberate, the way you move toward something that has every right to run. "The moment you step outside this building, you are not my problem anymore. You are theirs." Jane stared at him across the length of the office. The city blazed 40 floors below them, 40 floors of ordinary Wednesday morning. People buying coffee, answering emails, living lives that did not involve standing in a locked room with a man whose real name she had apparently never known. "Who," she said very carefully, "is they?" He reached into his pocket, turned his phone toward her. The photograph on the screen was taken this morning. She knew because of the coat, the black one she had grabbed at the last second when the beige felt too warm. Whoever took this photo was watching her before she left her apartment, before she made the decision to come in, before she even picked up the resignation letter off the printer. 4 photographs, 4 different angles, 4 different people in 4 different positions around the building entrance, none of them looking at the camera, all of them looking at her. Her mouth went completely dry. "Sit down, Jane," Hyun-ju said, and this time it was not a command. It was something quieter and more honest than anything he had said to her in 3 months. Something that sounded, in this locked glass room in a city she had run to because she had nowhere else left, like a man who had run out of ways to pretend. She sat. "Wherever you are watching this right now, drop your city in the comments. A woman took a job she needed and ended up locked in a room with the most dangerous man in Seoul. And the most terrifying part is not the locked door. It is that she had already fallen for him before she ever found out who he really was. If you are new here, subscribe. We do not do ordinary stories on this channel. Stay with me. It started the way all dangerous things start, with something simple. Money. Jane needed it the way people need air when they have been underwater too long. Urgently, specifically, with no room left in the situation for pride. Her brother David's voice over the phone 3 weeks before she found the job. Posting had been the kind of calm that is worse than crying. He had read her the number the doctors had quoted. Once. Clearly. And then he had said, "Don't worry, Jay," in the exact tone he had used their whole lives to let her know he was already worrying enough for both of them. She had sat on the edge of the bathtub in her small rented room in Seoul and done the calculation 14 different ways. She had arrived at the same answer every time. She needed this job. She wore her best dress to the interview, deep burgundy, fitted at the waist, professional without disappearing. She had learned a long time ago that walking into spaces not built for you required a specific kind of armor. Not the armor of shrinking, but of presence. You arrived like you had already been given the seat. You did not apologize for being remarkable. Night Bloom Technologies was 43 floors of black glass rising out of the Gangnam skyline, like a monument to something that had nothing to prove and knew it. The lobby was white marble and paid silence. She gave her name at the front desk and was taken to the 38th floor and sat outside a frosted glass door with her folder on her knees and her spine exactly where it needed to be. There were no other candidates in the waiting room. She would think about that later. The door opened. A man came through it on a phone call, speaking Korean. Low, precise. The kind of voice that expects to be obeyed and is never surprised when it is. He went to the window without acknowledging her and finished his call and turned around. Jane had prepared for a lot of things. She had not prepared for Choi Hyun-ju. Tall, angular. A face assembled with a precision that felt deliberate rather than accidental. Sharp jaw, dark eyes. A stillness that was not emptiness but depth. The single streak of blonde through his black hair should have looked careless. It didn't. The tattoos visible at his collar and on the backs of his hands were dark and intricate. He wore no tie. He looked at her the way people look at things that genuinely surprise them. Directly, and then with enormous control. "Jane, I do," he said. Not a question. "Yes. Sit." She was already sitting. She stayed exactly where she was. Watch something. Move at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Something more considered than that. He sat. The interview began. 40 minutes. He did not ask about her qualifications. He asked how she thought. He gave her problems and watched her solve them out loud and listened without interrupting, those dark eyes giving nothing back and absorbing everything. Near the end, he asked why she had come to Seoul. She gave him the clean version. David. The surgery. The number the doctors had quoted. He listened without his face changing. Then he nodded once, slowly, and it felt less like acknowledgement and more like a private decision reaching its conclusion. He offered her the job before she reached the elevator. She accepted in the lobby, walked into the cold Seoul air, allowed herself 30 seconds of relief, called David. She did not let herself think about the specific way Hyun-ju had looked at her across that desk, the quality of it, the way it had landed somewhere low in her chest and stayed there warm and unasked for, like a hand placed gently on a door she had kept closed for a long time. She was here for David. That was all. The first month was clean. She was exceptional at the job, 2 steps ahead of everything he needed, precise in every meeting, fluent in the unspoken language of powerful rooms. He was demanding the way very intelligent people are demanding, through expectation, not cruelty. She met every expectation. They found a rhythm, almost entirely professional. Almost. There were small things she did not name. The way he would come stand beside her at the window at the end of long days, not speaking, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him even without contact. The way he brought her coffee every morning, black, no sugar, without asking, which was exactly how she took it, which she had never told him. The way he looked at her in meetings, not inappropriately, just longer than necessary, like he was reading something in her face that the rest of the room had no access to. She ignored it, David's surgery was in 4 months. The second month was harder. She knew him now the way you know someone you cannot stop observing. She knew he arrived before everyone and left after everyone, and that this was not ambition but the behavior of a man with something at his back. She knew his office had an arrangement that never changed, and that any deviation in it made something tighten in his jaw, in a way he thought no one noticed. She knew that with most people he was architecturally distant, but that with her, in the late hours when the floor emptied, and it was just the two of them, and the city spread below like scattered glass, that distance would slip. Those moments cost her things she couldn't afford to lose. She managed, barely. It was the 7th week when Kwon Soo-han walked out of the elevator. 7 p.m. Jane at her desk. The elevator opened and a man came through it who did not belong. Dark coat, ordinary face, the careful unremarkability of someone trained to not be remembered. She was always paying attention. He spoke to the security guard, showed a badge, said detective. Jane looked up and their eyes met and something moved in his expression. Fast, controlled, almost invisible. She caught it, filed it, smiled politely, told him Mr. Choi was unavailable. He left a card, just a name and number. No precinct, no official letterhead. Kwon Soo-han. She held it for a moment, put it in her drawer, told Hyunju about it the next morning, factual and professional, and watched his face do something too fast to read before he rebuilt it completely. "Thank you," he said, and went back to his work. She should have paid more attention to that silence, to what lived inside it. The file was the 9th week. She was not looking for it. She needed the Henderson contract. She went to the filing room adjacent to his office. She pulled the wrong drawer. The wrong folder fell open before she could catch it. She should have closed it immediately. She read 3 pages before she made herself stop. 3 pages was enough. Names that had no business in a legitimate business record. Transactions with no trace in any account she managed. A figure with enough zeros to make her vision blur. And at the top of a handwritten internal memo, in Hyunju's precise and unmistakable handwriting, Black Lotus. She closed the folder, put it back, walked to her desk, sat, looked at Seoul through the glass for a long time, heard her mother's voice in the back of her skull, clear as anything. "Jane, baby, what did you walk into? 3 days of not sleeping. 3 days of going to work and doing her job and smiling the smile she had built over years that gave absolutely nothing away, and thinking every time he looked at her, he knows, he can see it. This man reads rooms like other people read books, and he is going to look right through you." He didn't, or he waited. Soo-han came back first, Tuesday morning, her cafe, the small basement 1-2 blocks from Night Bloom where the hazelnut latte was better than anything within 10 minutes. He was already at the table nearest the door when she walked in. Not performing surprise this time, just sitting there, waiting, with that warm and honest face that had probably convinced a great number of people of a great number of things. "Please sit down," he said quietly. "Just a few minutes." She should have left. She sat. He told her Night Bloom was a front. 6 years. A criminal network embedded so deeply into Seoul's elite that the money and the influence and the silence had become indistinguishable from the city's legitimate architecture. He told her Choi Hyunju was not a man who had stumbled into something dark. He was the man who had built the dark from the ground up, deliberately, starting at 26 years old. He told her that her access, her position, the files she touched daily, could be the thing that finally broke the case open. He told her he could get her out clean. Home. David's surgery paid for. No trace of her involvement remaining. Jane looked at her coffee cup. "How did you know about my brother?" she said. 1 fraction of a second. A single beat of hesitation that a less observant person would have missed entirely. "We've been monitoring the company for over a year. Everyone connected to Choi becomes a person of interest. That includes you." She looked at him, at the warm eyes and the honest face, and the one small hesitation that did not belong in a ready answer. "Give me time to think," she said. She walked the 2 blocks back and rode the elevator to the 38th floor, and sat at her desk, and stared at her screen, and thought. 2 men. 2 different versions of the same story. One of them is lying. She already knew which one. She just needed to understand why that knowledge was not making the decision any simpler. She printed the resignation letter the next morning. Then she carried it in her bag for 4 more days. 4 days of Hyunju, which was the problem. Thursday evening, 8 p.m. She was still at her desk, and he came out of his office and stopped when he saw her and said nothing for a moment. Then, quietly, "Have you eaten?" She hadn't. He came back 20 minutes later with food, 2 containers, set one on the corner of her desk without ceremony, and took the other back to his office. No production, no performance, just the specific attentiveness of someone who had been watching without meaning to and could not stop. She sat with the food and thought, this is not what a monster looks like. But that is exactly what someone who is very good at not looking like a monster would want you to think. She went home and stared at the ceiling and had a completely honest conversation with herself about the fact that she was in serious trouble. Not the locked doors and men watching buildings kind of trouble. The other kind. The kind that begins quietly in your chest and spreads outward with no clean exit and no way to unknow what you have come to know about a person. She brought the resignation letter to work Wednesday morning, folded in the inside pocket of her coat. She had made her decision. She was going to walk into his office, hand him the letter, and leave before the situation swallowed any more of her. She knocked on his office door at 8 a.m. He was already at his desk, always already there. The city still blue and dark behind him through the glass, the pen holder exactly where it always was, the coffee she hadn't made yet conspicuously absent because she had planned to be gone. He looked up. She opened her mouth. The door behind her burst open. Ji-won came through it fast. Ji-won who was always measured, always 3 degrees below urgent, always the still water of the operation. And he was none of those things right now. His face was tight. His voice was clipped and low. "We have a problem." Grounder. Floor. 4 of Suhan's men. They're asking... He glanced at Jane, back to Hyunju. They're asking for her. The room stopped. Jane felt the blood leave her face. Hyunju was already on his feet. The shift was instant and total. CEO gone, something older and harder in its place. Something that moved with the ease of a man who had been in rooms like this before and had always been the last one standing. He spoke rapid Korean to Ji-won. Ji-won nodded and left. Hyunju looked at Jane. "Stay in this office," he said, calm, absolute. "Do not open that door until I come back." "What is Jane?" Just her name. But the way he said it, like it was the most important word in the room. 10 minutes. Trust me for 10 minutes. He held her gaze for 2 seconds. Then he was gone. She lasted 4 minutes. The sounds came up through the building in fragments. Impact. Something breaking. The specific hard-edged quality of a real fight that has no rules and no mercy and no pause. Between moments. She took the stairwell, went down 7 floors to the mezzanine level, looked over the railing. What she saw made her grip the metal with both hands. 4 men, plus Hyunju, plus 2 of his security team, one of whom was already down on one knee with his hand pressed to his ribs. The 4 men moved like professionals. They came from angles. They coordinated without speaking. This was not their first time. Hyunju moved like something else entirely. She had worked beside this man for 3 months, handed him coffee, sat close enough in meetings to know the particular way he smelled and the exact cadence of his breathing when he was thinking. She had built what she thought was a complete picture. None of that picture had included this. He dropped under the first swing and came back up with an elbow that connected with the man's temple and sent him sideways into the marble wall. The second man came from the left. Hyunju caught the arm mid-swing, twisted sharply, used the man's own forward momentum to drive him face first into the reception desk, with a crack that echoed up 7 floors and made Jane flinch. The third came with a blade. Hyunju did not retreat from it. He stepped in, inside the arc, inside the danger, which was the absolute last thing the man expected. Got his forearm across the knife wrist and drove the heel of his palm straight up into the man's nose. The knife hit the marble and skidded away. The man dropped. The 4th man hesitated for 1 second. That was all it took. Hyunju crossed the distance in 2 strides, and it ended in a single sequence. Fast and final and completely without hesitation. And then there was silence. He stood in the lobby with blood on his knuckle and 4 men on the floor around him and his chest rising and falling hard. He reached up and adjusted his collar, looked down at the nearest man for a moment. Then he looked up. He found her at the mezzanine railing immediately, like he had, known exactly where she would go, like he had been tracking her without looking at her the entire time. They looked at each other across 7 floors of open air. She did not know what her face was doing. She only knew she could not look away from him, and her legs had stopped being entirely reliable. He said her name from the lobby. Not loud. She heard it perfectly. She went downstairs. He had a cut above his left eyebrow. She saw it the moment she reached him, a clean split in the skin, dark and slow. She did not think. She reached up and pressed 2 fingers to the edge of it. He went completely still. "You're cut," she said. "Obvious. Unnecessary." "I know," he said. He was looking at her the way he had looked from the lobby, like she was the only thing in the room not moving. "You should have stayed upstairs," he said. "I know," she said. Her fingers were still at his face. He raised his hand, the one without blood on it, and covered her fingers with his, held them there, against his jaw, without speaking. The lobby was silent around them. Ji-won and the remaining security were at the periphery, being professionally invisible. "Jane," he said. "That register again, the one with no armor in it." "Don't," she said. She didn't take her hand back. "I'm not going to do anything you don't want me to do," he said. "I just need you to know something. Whatever you decide to do with that letter in your coat." She felt the air leave her completely, because she had not told him about the letter, and he had known all morning, and chosen not to say a word. "I will not stop you. Not because I don't want to. Because you don't belong in any of this." She stared at him. "But you need to understand what you are walking toward if you leave," he said quietly. "Suhan is not a detective, Jane. He is not a man who will let you walk away clean once you have given him what he needs. He has never let anything go in his life." His jaw tightened. "It is the one thing we have in common." "Who is he?" she said. He held her gaze. "My brother," he said. "Not by blood. By the same man who raised us both and chose me and threw him away when he was 17 years old. And every single thing Suhan has done since then has been building toward this." A pause. "I'm sorry you are standing in the middle of it. That is the one thing in all of this that I genuinely regret." She searched his face, looked for the angle, for the calculation underneath the honesty, for the thing that powerful and dangerous men always kept running beneath the surface of the moments that looked like vulnerability. She found none of it. She found something looking back at her instead that had the specific quality of a feeling that has been locked in a room for a long time and has finally, quietly, run out of reasons to stay there. She took her hand back slowly, looked at Ji-won, looked back at Hyunju. "Come upstairs," she said. "Let me do something about that cut." Something moved across his face, quick and unguarded and completely unmanaged, there and gone. "Okay," he said. She found the first aid kit in his office bathroom. She sat him on the edge of his desk, this desk she had worked beside for 3 months, with its unmovable pen holder, and its view of the city, and all the late nights she had spent pretending very hard not to notice the man sitting behind it. And she stood between his knees and cleaned the cut above his eye, with a focus she was using to avoid looking directly at his face. He sat completely still. He let her work, and he watched her the way he always watched her. That full, unbroken attention that had never once in 3 months had any performance in it. "It doesn't need stitches," she said. "Good," he said. She pressed the butterfly strip into place. Her fingers lingered 1 second longer than necessary at his temple. In that 1 second, he turned his head very slightly, and his lips brushed the inside of her wrist. Not an accident. Not quite a kiss. Something in between. A feeling that had gotten out before he could stop it. She felt it move through her from her wrist downward, warm and electric, and completely unwelcome in the most welcome way. She pulled her hand back. He looked up at her. "I'm sorry," he said. "Are you?" she said. Her voice was not steady. Something moved in his jaw. "No," he he said. I'm sorry I said I was sorry. I'm not. The office held its breath around them. This is not a good idea, she said. I know. You are... She stopped, pressed her lips together. You are not someone I should... I know, he said again, softer. I know exactly what I am. I have never once not known. A pause. Something in his eyes going quieter and more honest. It doesn't change anything. I've tried, Jane. I have genuinely tried. She looked at him sitting on the edge of his own desk with a butterfly strip above his eye, and blood dried on his knuckle, and all of his careful, armoured, constructed self-laid, completely open in front of her, and she thought about 3 months of coffee, and late evenings and long looks across meeting tables, and all the things she had refused to name. She thought about the feel of his lips against her wrist. She thought about David, and the surgery, and the reason she had come to this city, and the version of herself that had walked into this building 11 weeks ago and thought, I will be smart. I will be careful. I will not let anything catch me off guard. She thought about the 4 days he had spent feeding her and watching her and waiting, quietly, for her to make whatever decision she was going to make. She closed the distance and kissed him. Not dramatically, just closed the small space between them and pressed her mouth to his, soft and certain, like a decision she had been circling for weeks and was done circling. He was still for 1 full second, and then his hands came up, both of them, one at her waist and one at the side of her face, and he kissed her back. And it was nothing like the CEO, nothing like the controlled and untouchable and precisely managed man she had maintained a professional relationship with for 3 months. It was deep and unhurried, and completely without pretense, the way a person kisses when they have stopped performing and started meaning it. She had her hands in his hair, the black and the blonde, without remembering moving them. He pulled back first, just enough, forehead dropping to hers, both of them breathing. Jane, he said, just her name, just that. I know, she said. His hands didn't move from her waist. We are in the middle of, I know. Suhan is, I know. She pulled back enough to see his face. I know all of it. I am not confused about the situation. She held his eyes. Are you? He looked at her for a long moment. No, he said. I have not been confused about you since the first day you walked into this building and sat down without being told to and looked at me like I was something you intended to understand. Something in his voice that was quiet and undefended. I have just been very aware of everything it would cost you to be near me. She felt something settle in her chest, warm and real and slightly terrifying. Tell me everything, she said. She stepped back, smoothed her dress, put herself back together piece by piece, the way she always had. About Suhan, about Black Lotus, about what is actually happening. No more files I find by accident. No more things I have to figure out alone. She looked at him steadily. If I am inside this, I am inside it with the truth. He held her gaze. Then he stood, adjusted his cuffs, picked up his phone and set it face down on the desk. And then he looked at her and something in his posture shifted. Not the CEO coming back, but something older and more unguarded than even the man she had just kissed. Something that had the quality of a person preparing to say things they have not said to anyone. Then sit down, he said, because the truth about Suhan starts 12 years ago, and it does not get easier as it goes. She sat. He pulled his chair from behind the desk and placed it in front of her, and sat close, their knees almost touching, and he laced his hands together and looked at the floor for a moment. Then he looked up, and he told her about the man who had raised them both, Lee Tae-jin, a name that still moved through Seoul's underworld like a ghost, not because he was dead, but because he had made himself untouchable through 30 years of careful, precise, catastrophic violence. He had found Hyunju at 15, a boy from nothing with a mind that processed risk the way other people process language, instinctively and completely. He had built him, taught him, given him structure and money and a cold education in how power actually worked beneath the city's polished surface. He had treated him for 4 years like something close to a son. When Hyunju was 19, Lee Tae-jin had found Suhan, a different boy, warmer, angrier, carrying wounds he hadn't learned to hide yet. Tae-jin had brought him in the same way, with patience and money and the particular cruelty of making someone feel chosen. And then, at 17, Soo-han had made a mistake. A significant one. In a world that did not have a language for significant mistakes, only for consequences. Tae-jin had put him out. Completely. Publicly. In front of men whose respect was the only currency that mattered. Hyun-ju had been in the room. He had been 19 years old and he had said nothing. And he had been carrying that silence like a stone inside his chest for 12 years. He blames you, Jane said. Not a question. Yes. Should he? Hyun-ju was quiet for a moment. I have asked myself that question every day for 12 years, he said. The answer changes depending on who I am being when I ask it. Jane looked at him, at this man who had built an empire, out of shadow and who brought her coffee every morning and who had kissed her like someone who had forgotten how to want something until she showed up. She thought about Soo-han in the cafe with his warm eyes and his careful story. And the one fraction of a second, he had hesitated. He is using me, she said. Yes. He was never building a case. No. He wanted you to bring him something from inside Nightbloom. Something I would not have given easily. And once you brought it, he stopped. He would have eliminated the witness, she finished. Yes. The word landed in the room and sat there. Jane breathed through it. So what happens now, she said. Now, Hyun-ju said, and his voice was steady in the way that people's voices are steady when they have made a decision and are done deliberating. I end it. What should have been ended 12 years ago when I was 19 and too afraid of losing what I had to do. What was right? He looked at her directly. I am going to handle. Soo-han, I'm going to remove every piece of this from your life. And you are going to go back to your apartment tonight with Ji-won on the street below and your door locked. And you are going to call your brother. And you are going to let me do what I should have done a long time ago. She held his gaze. And if I don't want Ji-won on the street? The corner of his mouth moved. That almost smile. The one she had spent 3 months cataloguing without admitting she was cataloguing it. Then tell me that, he said, and I'll come myself. The room filled with something warm and slightly impossible. Ji-won is fine, she said. He nodded. And then, because he was still the man he was, controlled and precise and always 2 steps ahead of his own feelings, he stood and moved back to his side of the desk, and the professional distance reasserted itself in his posture. But not in his eyes. His eyes stayed exactly where they had been. Go home, Jane, he said. I will see you tomorrow. She picked up her bag, walked to the door. Her hand on the handle, she stopped. The letter, she said. He looked at her. She reached into the inside pocket of her coat, pulled out the folded resignation letter, looked at it for a moment, set it on the corner of the nearest desk. Keep it, she said, in case I change my mind. She opened the door and walked out. The elevator was empty, and she stood in it and let herself breathe for the first time in what felt like days, and pressed her fingers to her own lips for just one moment. Not dramatically, just privately, the way you touch something to confirm it was real. And then she straightened and watched the numbers descend and thought about David, and about Seoul, and about the specific way Hyun-ju's hands had felt at her waist, and the 12-year war she had just agreed to stand inside of. The lobby doors opened into the cold evening air. Ji-won was already waiting by the car. She got in without a word. He drove without speaking. The city moved past the windows in streams of light, and she watched it, and thought about the truth that Hyun-ju had just handed her, and what it was going to cost both of them to get to the other side of it, and whether the other side of it was somewhere she was actually going to be allowed to reach. She called David from the car. He answered on the second ring. Jay? His voice, always, like coming home. Hey, she said. I just wanted to hear your voice. A pause. She could feel him smiling. You okay? Yes, she said. And then, because David had always been able to hear the thing underneath the thing. I'm okay. I promise. I'll explain everything soon. Okay, he said simply. I'm here. I know, she said. That's why I called. She sat back against the seat and watched Seoul move past her in the dark and thought, this is not what I came here for. Then she thought, but maybe this is exactly where I was supposed to end up. Ji-won parked outside her building. She thanked him, went upstairs. unlocked her apartment, dropped her bag on the chair, stood in the middle of her small living room in the quiet of the city at night, and pressed both hands flat against her chest, the way she had done in that office when she was furious and frightened. This time she was neither of those things. She didn't know what she was. She knew that tomorrow she was going to walk back into Nightbloom Technologies and sit at her desk and do her job and exist in the same room as Choi Hyun-ju, and that this was going to feel different now in every way that mattered. She knew that somewhere in this city, Soo-hun was watching and planning, and building towards something that had her name written into it, without her permission. She knew that the next 2 weeks were going to ask things of her that she could not yet see the shape of. She went to the window, looked out at Seoul. It blazed back at her. 40,000 windows of light, indifferent and beautiful and completely unbothered by the fact that one woman in one small apartment was standing at one window, trying to locate her bearings after the longest Wednesday of her life. She found them. She always found them. That was the thing about her. The thing that Hyun-ju had apparently seen from the very first day, from across a desk in a 38th floor office before she had said a single word. She always found her bearings. She always knew where she stood. She stood at the window for a while longer. Then she went to bed. Outside, on the street below, Ji-won's car sat quiet and still and present, and the city moved around it the way the city moves around everything, vast and continuous and already carrying the next thing toward her, whether she was ready for it or not. She went back the next morning, 7:58 a.m., 2 coffees from the basement cafe. Black for him, black for her. She knocked on his office door and walked in and set his coffee on his desk and sat at her workstation and pulled up the day's schedule, without ceremony. He looked at her for a moment. She did not look up. "Good morning," he said. "You have a conference call with the Singapore office at 9, she said. "The Lim account files are on your desk. Your 2:30 conflicts with the Daejeon meeting. I would move Daejeon to Thursday, and..." She looked up. "The 4 men from yesterday. What happens to them?" He held her gaze. "They will not be a problem." "That is not what I asked." A pause. "They have been returned to the people who sent them," he said, with a message. "What message?" "That the next ones they send will not be returned." She held his gaze for a moment. Then she nodded once and went back to her screen. The day moved the way days move when something significant has shifted, but the world has not yet caught up to it. Normally on the surface, with everything underneath running at a different temperature. She sat in his 9 o'clock call and took notes and handed him the Lim files and rescheduled Daejeon and answered calls and did every ordinary thing the job required. He worked with the focused precision that was his natural state. They were professional and composed, and every time they were within 3 feet of each other, the air between them had a charge that could not be managed by professionalism alone. At noon, Ji-won came to her desk and set an envelope down without a word and left. She opened it. A key card for an apartment in Cheongdong-gu, and a single handwritten line. Not a command, not a request, just, "It is safer." H. She put the key card in her bag. She did not go to the new apartment that night. She went to her own place because she was not ready to give that up yet. And Ji-won followed in the unmarked car. And she stood at her window and looked at the street below and thought about the key card and what it meant that he had sent it the way he had. No pressure, no instruction, just a door left open, and the decision left entirely to her. She slept better than she expected. The call from David came Friday morning at 6 a.m. She was on her feet before she was fully awake. What happened? Jay. His voice was tight in a way that David's voice was never tight. Someone came to the hospital yesterday, asking about me, asking about you, asking specifically whether you were still in Seoul and who you were working for. The cold that moved through her had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. David, are you safe right now? I'm at home. The nurses told me this morning. Jay, I need you to go to Auntie Chisholm's house today, not tomorrow. Pack a bag and go, and do not tell anyone except me where you are going. Her voice was completely steady. She had learned that for David a long time ago. Can you do that? Jane. David, can you do that? A pause. Yes. Good. I love you. I will call tonight. She ended the call, sat 3 seconds in the dark. Then she called Hyunju. He answered on the first ring. Jane. They went. To my brother, she said. 1 second of silence. 1 second of Choi Hyunju absorbing information and making decisions at a speed that most people take an hour to reach. Is he safe? I'm moving him now. Good. She heard him already moving. Footsteps. A door. Come to the office. Now. Don't take the regular car. Hyunju. Jane. That register. The one without armor. Come to me, right now, please. She was already out of bed. She took a taxi on a different route and watched the streets through the rear window the entire way, and thought about Suhan, and thought about David packing a bag at 6 in the morning because his sister had walked into something in Seoul that she could not see the edges of. Hyunju was in the lobby when she arrived, not behind his desk, not on the 38th floor where she had always found him. The lobby, which was not where he ever was, and the sight of him standing there, dark coat, no tie, watching the entrance doors, made something constrict in her chest before she had even pushed through the glass. He crossed to her in 4 steps. He put both hands on her face and looked at her eyes, checking, the way you check something you were afraid had been damaged. And the inspection was so thorough and so unperformed that it hit her deeper than the kiss had. I'm fine, she said. I know, he said. He dropped his hands, but not far. They settled at her shoulders. I needed to see it. They went to David, she said. This is Suhan. Yes. He is escalating. Yes. How far does this go before you stop it? He looked at her steadily. It ends tonight, he said. I am not waiting any longer. Something in his voice that was not anger. Older than anger. The sound of a decision that has been postponed past every deadline it had and is finally, irrevocably, arriving. What are you going to do, she said. Bring him in, he said. Suhan and I are going to finish this in a room where he cannot use you as leverage. He paused, his hands still at her shoulders. And you are going to the Songdong apartment today. Not your place. Today, Jane. She opened her mouth. Please, he said, quietly. Just that word, which she understood cost him something. Let me do this one thing. She looked at him for a moment. Okay, she said. Something in him released. Barely visible, but she was close enough to feel it. Jiwon took her to the Songdong apartment at noon. 14th floor. Clean and quiet and furnished with the specific taste of someone who understood comfort without performance. There were groceries in the refrigerator. Fresh ones. Someone had been sent ahead. She stood in the living room and looked at the city from this new angle. Seoul from a different direction. The same city wearing a different face. And thought about the groceries and the key card and the handwritten line. And all the ways Choi Hyunju said the things he could not say directly. She called David at 1 p.m. He was at Auntie Chisholm's. Safe. Irritated. Which meant he was okay enough to be irritated. Which was the best possible news. At 3 p.m. her phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it for 2 rings. Answered. You moved, Suhan said. His voice was different on the phone. The warmth he wore in person had been left somewhere else. Smart. He is good at moving pieces. What do you want, Suhan? I want what I have always wanted. A pause. I did not mean for David to be involved. That was not my instruction. Then someone acted without your instruction, she said, which means you are not as in control of this as you think. A silence. Longer than she expected. Come and talk to me, he said. Just us. No Jiwon. No Hyunju. I will tell you things about the man you are protecting that will change what you think you know. I already know who he is, she said. Do you? Soft, almost gentle. Do you know about the night Taejin gave Hyunju a choice, me or the Empire? And Hyunju chose without hesitating? Do you know how long I spent in a hospital because of what that choice led to? His voice was steady, but underneath it, something was shaking. He was my brother, the only person who knew everything about me. And he chose, and he did not look back. Jane held the phone and felt the weight of that, and did not pretend it was nothing. I believe that happened, she said carefully. I believe it hurt you in ways that don't have a name. She paused. But you came after my brother. You used me without my knowledge. Whatever Hyunju did 12 years ago, you have made choices too. You don't get to only count his. A long silence. He is going to break your heart, Suhan said quietly. Not because he wants to, because it is the only thing men like him know how to do. That is my risk to take, she said. She ended the call, sat with the phone in her lap. Then she texted Hyunju. He called me. I'm fine. Tell me when it's done. The reply came in, under a minute. Tonight. Don't open the door for anyone but Ji-won. She put the phone down, made tea, sat at the window and watched the afternoon go dark over Seoul. She was asleep on the couch at midnight when the door opened. She was on her feet before she was fully awake, phone in hand, heart in her throat. And then she saw it was Hyunju, and the phone went back down. He looked like he had been through something. Still upright. Still himself. Still moving with that quality of controlled purpose that was the architecture of him. But the coat had a tear at the shoulder, dried blood at the corner of his mouth. His knuckles were worse than after the lobby. Both hands, which told her the fight had been longer and harder, and had not gone only one way. It's done, he said. She crossed to him. She put her hand to his jaw, checking, the same way he had checked her in the lobby this morning. And he turned into it. Like her hands on his face were something he had been waiting for without knowing how to ask. Suhan, she said. Alive, he said immediately. Alive. He will be out of Seoul by morning. Everything he built to come after me is gone. Your name is clear. David is safe. He held her eyes. It's done. She pulled him down and kissed him. Not like the first time, which had been soft and careful, and a decision being made. This was the relief of something being over, and the weight of everything it had cost, and the specific tenderness of having been frightened for someone, and finding them whole. He made a low sound against her mouth, and his arms came around her and held her hard. She pulled back, looked at his face. You're hurt. I've been worse. That is not reassuring. The corner of his mouth, that almost smile. No, he said. I don't suppose it is. She took his hand and looked at the damage and pressed her lips to his knuckles. Gently, just that, and felt him go very still above her. Jane, he said. Don't, she said softly. Just let me. He let her. She sat him at the kitchen table and found the first aid kit, and sat across from him in the small pool of light, and cleaned his hands and his face. And he sat completely still and watched her with those dark eyes that had stopped performing somewhere around midnight, in a room 40 floors above Seoul 3 days ago. Tell me what happened, she said. He told her. Suhan had agreed to meet. A warehouse in Mapogu. Neutral ground they had both known from years ago when it meant something different. Hyunju and Ji-won, Suhan and 3 of his men. The kind of meeting that everyone arrives at knowing it will not stay a meeting for long. It didn't. Suhan came through the warehouse door and looked at Hyunju across 30 feet of concrete floor, and something in his face that had been held in place for 12 years finally gave way. He said nothing. He crossed the floor in 10 strides and swung. Hyunju took it, deliberately, let it land against his jaw, and let his head snap sideways and straightened, and did not raise his hands. Suhan swung again. He took that one too. The third swing he caught, grabbed the fist and held it, and looked at his brother and said quietly, in Korean, the thing he had needed to say for 12 years and had built an entire empire of silence around instead. I should have walked away from everything. That night, I should have chosen you and I didn't, and there has not been a single day since that I have not known it. Suhan went still. Then his men moved. All 3 at once, which was the part that had not been agreed upon, the part that changed the nature of the evening entirely. Ji-won took the first one immediately, fast and practiced, and the second came at him from the side and they went down together into the concrete. That left the third man for Hyunju. He was a big man, trained. He came with a weapon, not a gun, a baton, which in a closed concrete space was in many ways worse. He swung low and Hyunju jumped the first arc and caught the second on his forearm, the impact going up through the bone all the way to his shoulder. And then he was inside the man's reach, and it became close and ugly, and entirely without elegance. He took a knee to the ribs that he felt immediately and completely. He drove his elbow into the man's throat in return, and the man crumpled. He straightened, both hands up, chest heaving, ribs screaming. Ji-won had the other two contained. Soo-han was standing exactly where Hyun-ju had left him. He had not moved. He had watched his own men lose, and he had not moved, which was the thing that told Hyun-ju everything about where his brother actually was inside all of this. Not in the war, not anymore. Somewhere much more exhausted than that. He crossed to him. They stood face to face in the warehouse, and the sound of the city hummed outside, and neither of them spoke for a long moment. "I don't know how to stop being angry at you," Soo-han said finally. His voice was the voice of someone who has been holding a single feeling for so long that they have forgotten the weight of it is not normal. "I know," Hyun-ju said. "I am not asking you to stop." A pause. "I am asking you to take it somewhere that doesn't end with both of us burning everything down." Another silence. "She is good for you," Soo-han said. Not warmly, but not coldly either. Factually, the way someone states something they have observed and cannot argue with. "Yes," Hyun-ju said. "Don't waste it," Soo-han said. "The way you waste everything else." He picked up his coat from the warehouse floor. He said something quiet to his men. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the frame and did not turn around. "Hyun-ju," he said. "Yes." A long pause. "I heard you," he said. "What you said. About choosing wrong." He pushed the door open. "I heard you." And he walked out into the Seoul night. Jane held the phone in her lap after he finished telling her. Processed it quietly in the way she processed everything. Not rushing the feeling, just letting it settle into its actual shape. "He heard you," she said. "Yes." "That matters." "I know," he said. Something in his face that was complicated and old and slowly, finally, becoming lighter. "I know it does." She pressed his hand between both of hers. Didn't speak, just held it. He looked at her across the kitchen table with the first aid kit between them and the city quiet outside, and something in his face she did not have a word for yet. Something that had the quality of a person looking at another person and thinking, simply and entirely, "You." "You should sleep," she said. "I should go," he said. "Hyun-ju." She said his name the way he said hers, plainly, with everything underneath visible. "You have been running since before I met you. Tonight you stopped." She stood. "Sleep. The city will still be here in the morning." He was quiet. Then he stood slowly. In the way, people move when they are more tired than they have admitted to anyone. And he came around the table and put his arms around her and held on. Not like the kiss, just held on. His face against her hair, her hands flat against his back. Both of them standing still in the kitchen while Seoul hummed outside, and everything that had been chasing them finally, for one night, stayed behind. She felt him exhale all the way down. "Okay," he said into her hair. "Okay," she said back. He slept on the couch. She brought the blanket from the bedroom, and he did not argue. She sat in the armchair across from him for a while, not watching strangely, just present, just in the same room while he finally stopped moving. And then she went to bed. In the morning, she woke to the smell of something cooking. She lay still for a moment. Then she got up and found him at the stove in last night's clothes. Coat abandoned, sleeves rolled to the elbows, the tattoos on his forearms dark in the morning, light. Making eggs with the focused application of someone who did not cook often, but was taking it completely seriously. She leaned in the doorway and looked at him. He noticed her after a moment, looked over his shoulder. "I found eggs," he said. "I see that," she said. "I cannot promise they will be good. I'll eat them anyway." Something warm moved across his face. He turned back to the stove. She sat at the kitchen table and watched him, and thought about all the mornings of the past 3 months. All the coffees brought without asking. All the late evenings and the long looks and the enormous effort he had put into not becoming something she could not walk away from. And the way he had become it anyway. Completely. Somewhere around the 3rd week without either of them saying a word. He set a plate in front of her. Sat across from her with his own. She took a bite. They were not good. Slightly overcooked, underseasoned. She ate everyone. What happens now, she said. He put his fork down. Not today. Not the logistics. She held his eyes. What happens to this? He looked at her across the table with the morning coming through the windows. I cannot promise you easy, he said. I cannot promise you clean or simple. My world is what it is. I have built it into something I can manage, but I cannot make it disappear. He paused. What I can promise is this. I will not lie to you. I will not put you in danger through negligence again. I will not choose an empire over you. I did that once with someone who deserved better, and I carried it for 12 years. He looked directly at her. I am not doing it again. Jane looked at him for a moment. That was a very long way of saying you want me to stay, she said. Something unlocked in his face. Yes, he said. That is exactly what it was. Then just say it, she said, directly. He held her eyes. Stay, he said. Simple, unguarded, completely without armor. Stay, Jane. She reached across the table and took his hand. Okay, she said. The weeks that followed were not a fairy tale. She had never wanted one. They found a rhythm that was theirs, difficult in the places where two people with strong instincts and fully formed ways of moving through the world will always be difficult, and good in ways that surprised her consistently. He was hard to love the way that very self-sufficient people are hard to love. He forgot sometimes that decisions affecting her were hers to be part of. She told him every time. He took it without defensiveness every time. That consistency, in a man with as much power as he carried, was its own extraordinary thing. 3 weeks in, he came to her apartment on a Tuesday morning before work. She heard the knock at 7:15 a.m. and opened the door to find him standing there with 2 coffees, having driven 40 minutes because he had been in Busan for 3 days and had apparently, genuinely, been unable to wait the additional time until she arrived at the office. He looked slightly embarrassed by his own urgency. She looked at him for 3 seconds. Then she pulled him inside and kissed him until the coffee went cold and he laughed against her mouth. A real laugh. Unmanaged. The kind she was learning was rare and therefore worth everything. And she thought, there it is. There is the thing underneath all the rest of it. 4 weeks in, they had their first real fight. He made a security decision that directly involved her schedule and did not tell her until Ji-won mentioned it in passing. She found out at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday, and she walked into his office and closed the door. And she did not raise her voice because she had never needed to raise her voice to be completely heard. We agreed, she said. He knew immediately. She could see it, the moment he understood what she had found out, and the moment after it, when he made the choice not to manage her. You're right, he said. I should have told you. Why didn't you? He was quiet for a moment. Because I have made every decision alone for 16 years, he said. And I am still learning that alone is not how this works anymore. He looked at her steadily. I am sorry. It will not happen again. She looked at him for a long moment, at the truth of it. The genuine difficulty of a person unlearning a thing that kept them safe for a decade and a half. At the fact that he had not deflected or explained or made her feel unreasonable for being right. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Don't do it again, she said, and walked back to her desk. He brought her coffee 10 minutes later, set it at her right hand, said nothing. She did not look up, but she felt the weight of it, of him trying, specifically and continuously, in all the small ways that accumulate into the shape of someone choosing you. And she thought, this is what it actually looks like, not the dramatic gesture. This. 5 weeks in, he kissed her in the elevator on the way up from a dinner, with 3 of his senior associates, and it was completely unprofessional and entirely his fault, and she did not complain even slightly. 6 weeks in, she came to work one morning and found a single item on her desk that had not been there the night before. A photograph. Small, framed simply. David. Taken at the hospital, laughing at something off camera, looking more alive than the last photograph she had of him. She did not know how he had gotten it. She picked it up and held it, and felt something in her chest go completely quiet. She did not mention it to him directly. She just moved the photograph to the corner of her desk, where she could see it from her chair. And when he came out of his office an hour later and noticed where she had placed it, something moved across his face that was private and real, and not for anyone else. That was the week she understood she was in love with him, completely and without conditions. The photograph had not been a grand gesture. It had been a small one, which was exactly the point. Grand gestures are easy. Small ones, the ones that require paying attention, consistently, over time, to another person's particular kind of grief. Those cost something different. Those are the ones that mean it. The night it almost came apart was a Thursday, 3 months after Suhan had left Seoul. A routine document review, her desk, a name that made her stop breathing. Lee Tae-jin. She stared at it, pulled the full document, read it twice. The transaction record was substantial. Moving through shell accounts, she now knew the architecture of well enough to trace, ending somewhere that was, without question, inside the Black Lotus network. Dated 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. She walked into his office, closed the door, placed the document on his desk, and stood with her arms at her sides and waited. He read it once. Then he was very still. "Is this recent?" she said. "Yes." "Lee Tae-jin is back." "Yes." "Were you going to tell me?" He looked up. She saw it. Not guilt exactly, but the expression of someone who had made a decision without consulting the person they should have consulted, and knew it, and had no clean defense for it. "I found out 4 days ago," he said. "I was handling it before I brought it to you because I did not want to worry you before it was necessary," she said. Her voice was quiet, controlled. The specific kind of controlled that he knew by now was more serious than shouting. "Yes." "And when was it going to be necessary?" she said. "When he was at the building? When he went back to David?" He stood. "I was trying to protect—" "Don't." The word cut clean. "Don't say that word to me like it explains the decision you made. We agreed. No more things I find by accident. No more navigating alone on my behalf." She held his eyes. "We agreed, Hyunju." He held her gaze. She could see it. The version of him that had spent 16 years making every call alone, fighting with the version of him that was here, now, trying to be a different kind of man. "You are right," he said, fully, without qualification. "I should have told you the moment I knew. That was the agreement and I broke it." He came around the desk and stood in front of her. "I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long, deliberate moment, long enough that she could feel him in the discomfort of it. "Tell me everything," she said. He told her. Tae-jin had re-emerged. He was consolidating old alliances. Men who had served him before Nightbloom became independent. He was coming to reclaim what he considered his, and he was moving in a way that suggested he knew exactly how Hyunju had changed in recent months and intended to use it as a weakness. "He knows about me," Jane said. Not a question. "Yes," Hyunju said. "He has known for some time." "Then we are not waiting for him to move first," she said. He looked at her. "We," she said firmly. "No more solo decisions. No more protecting me by leaving me out. If this is my life, and it is, whether either of us planned that, then it is mine to be inside of." She looked at him steadily. "What do you need from me?" He searched her face. Something in him settling. Not defeated, but resolved. The specific relief of a man who has been carrying something alone for so long, that being told he can share it lands harder than he expected. "I need you somewhere safe tonight while I move," he said, "and I need you to trust me to end this." "I trust you," she said. "Don't confuse trust with absence. You will call me. You will keep the line open. And if it goes silent for more than 20 minutes, Ji-won will call you immediately," he said. "Good," she said. She reached up and put her hand flat against his chest. Not dramatically, just there, just present. He covered it with his hand. "Come back," she said, simply. "Yes," he said. She was in the car 2 blocks from the warehouse with Ji-won, and a phone pressed to her ear and Hyunju's voice on the other end. She could hear him moving. She could hear the building, the specific quality of a large, empty space, footsteps on concrete, voices she could not make out. She sat in the dark of the back seat and listened and held on to every sound. 12 minutes in, she heard it change. The voices got louder. Something moved fast on the concrete. Multiple sets of footsteps, sudden and close. She heard impact. She heard Hyunju's breath change. Sharp, controlled. The sound of someone taking a hit and not stopping. Hyunju? He didn't answer. He was in it. She sat forward in the seat. Ji-won looked at her in the mirror. She shook her head. Don't move, not yet. And pressed the phone tighter to her ear and listened. She could hear the fight without seeing it, and in some ways that was worse. Impact and breath and movement, and the specific sounds of a space being used as a weapon against people inside it. A body hitting a wall, something clattering. Across concrete, a voice cutting off mid-sound. She could hear Ji-won's second man, on his own line somewhere inside, calling positions in Korean. She counted. She did not mean to count, but she did. 1 minute. 3. 7. At 11 minutes, the phone went silent. Not ended. Just silent. No sound at all. She stared at the screen. The call was still connected. The timer was still running. But nothing. 12 minutes. 13. Ji-won's hands were on the steering wheel. She could see his knuckles. Give it 5 more minutes, she said. Her voice was completely steady. She did not know how. 14 minutes. 15. She was already running the calculation. Which door? Which approach? How many people were inside? What Ji-won's people could? The sound came back. Not Hyunju's voice. One of his men. 3 words. He's okay. Coming now. She put the phone in her lap and pressed both hands flat against her thighs, and breathed for the first time in 15 minutes. Ji-won exhaled in the front seat. 5 minutes later, the car pulled up. 2 people in the back, Hyunju, and beside him, which she had not expected at all, Suhan. She got out. Suhan stepped out first. He looked different from every version she had known. Thinner, and something behind his eyes that was quieter than anything she had seen there before. Something that looked like a person who has put down a weight they have been carrying so long, they forgot it was not part of their body. He looked at her. Is it done? She said. Tae-jin is in custody, he said. Real custody. I've been building an actual case for 2 years. Not the cover story I gave you. Tonight finished it. He paused. He is done. She held his gaze for a moment. You worked with Hyunju tonight. Yes, he said. Something moved across his face. It appears we are capable of it. In limited circumstances. The ghost of something. Not quite a smile, but in the same family. It helped that we were both trying to get back to someone. She looked past him at Hyunju getting out of the car, with a slowness that told her immediately he had taken something significant to the ribs. She crossed to him. He straightened when he saw her coming. She walked straight into him and his arms came around her hard. 15 minutes, she said against his chest. The line went silent for 15 minutes. I know, he said, his voice rough. I know. I'm sorry. She held on tighter. She could feel him breathing. The measured pace of someone managing pain they were not advertising. She stepped back and looked at him directly. What did you take? Ribs, he said. 1 or 2. Hyunju. I've had worse, he said, and then saw her face and stopped immediately. I know that is not reassuring. I will see a doctor in the morning. Right now He looked at her with those completely unmanaged eyes. I just need this for a minute. She stepped back into him. He held on. Behind them, Suhan walked quietly to the other car, and Ji-won followed, and the city moved around all of them. Enormous and indifferent and full of ordinary people, having ordinary Thursday nights. The doctor confirmed 2 fractured ribs the following morning. Jane sat in the clinic and listened to the instructions, and then sat with him in the car afterward and told him, with complete calm, that the next time he went into a building with armed men, she would like a realistic timeline and a backup contact protocol that did not rely on one person remembering to call her in the aftermath. He looked at her. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. He reached across and took her hand. Jane Square. He said, yes, I love you. No preamble, no architecture, no careful management of the delivery. Just that, directly. the way he had slowly learned to say the things that mattered most. She turned and looked at him, at the fractured ribs and the streak of blonde, and the tattoos and the man inside all of it. Complicated, and real, and trying. Genuinely and specifically trying, which was the thing she had never been willing to accept as a substitute for easy, and had finally found in the last place she had planned for. "I know," she said. He raised his eyebrows. "I love you too," she said. "I have for a while. I was waiting for you to say it first because you needed to." She held his eyes. "You needed to get there yourself." Something broke open in his face. Clean and uncomplicated and entirely, completely his. He kissed her in the back of the car in the clinic car park in the middle of a Seoul morning with 2 fractured ribs and Ji-won making a dedicated effort to be invisible in the front seat. And it was nothing like their first kiss and exactly like all of them. Unhurried, real, the two of them choosing each other with full knowledge of what they were choosing and not one single reservation about it. Her hand against his face, his hands in her hair. Outside, Seoul went about its morning completely, unbothered. David's surgery was 6 weeks later. She flew home, held his hand before they took him in, sat in the waiting room with her mother and her aunties and the particular beautiful chaos of a family gathering in a moment of fear. Hyunju called at midnight Lagos time, said nothing much, just asked if she was okay, and listened to her answer and said he was glad and told her to sleep. She flew back to Seoul on a Tuesday. Hyunju was at the airport, not Ji-won, him. Standing in the arrivals hall in a dark coat with the blonde streak and the tattoos and the stillness, and the expression on his face when she came through the doors, was something she was going to carry for the rest of her life. She walked straight into him. He caught her. "How is he?" Hyunju said into her hair. "Good," she said. "He's going to be fine." His arms tightened. "Good," he said. They stood in the arrivals hall while the city moved around them, everyone going somewhere, carrying their particular version of love and urgency, an ordinary Tuesday life. And Jane pressed her face against his chest and felt his heartbeat under her cheek and thought about 11 months ago. A plane, 2 suitcases, a number the doctors had given her, and a determination that had no room left in it for anything except surviving. It had worked. Not the way she planned. Not cleanly or without cost. But the things worth keeping rarely look from the beginning like what they turn out to be. She had come to Seoul for David. She had found this too. She pulled back. Looked at Hyunju. He looked back at her with those dark eyes that had stopped pretending to be unreadable. Somewhere in a locked office on an ordinary Wednesday morning that had turned out to be the beginning of everything. "Take me home," she said. He took her home. If you made it to the end of this story, then you already know what it cost her to get here. She did not arrive in Seoul looking for love. She arrived looking for a way to save her brother. She walked into a building in Gangnam and said yes to a job that changed every single thing. Some of you watching this are in the middle of your own version of that walk. You do not know yet what is waiting on the other side of the door you are about to open. You do not know yet what the choice that feels right now like simply surviving is actually the beginning of. But you are moving. And that matters more than you know. Drop your city in the comments. Let us build a map of every place this story traveled today. Share it with someone who is in the middle of their own story right now. The messy middle, not the clean ending. They need this more than you know. And subscribe. Because every single week we come back to this channel and we give the woman in the room her full name, her full face, her full story. No shrinking. No waiting to be chosen. Jane chose. With full knowledge of what she was choosing. And she would choose it again, every single time.